I recently caught the bus to the village of Ewelme. Wish I could say I arrived in style in my 100 grand open-top sports car, but you know, cause he lives and all that. Ewelme was a fairly small and insignificant settlement, at least until the mid-15th century. At this time, the Duke and Duchess of Suffolk built a church, almshouses for the poor, and a schoolhouse here. All of these buildings still exist and still serve the same function as they did some 550 years ago. Ewelme Schoolhouse is the oldest in the state system, which is still using its original building. At this time, the Duke and Duchess were Alice and William de la Pole. This was Alice's third marriage, and her original name was Chaucer, which may sound familiar. She was the granddaughter of poet Geoffrey Chaucer, author of the Canterbury Tales. Not surprised it was her third marriage. She probably had a lot of gold diggers after her because of her celebrity status. The name Ewelme appears in the form Ewelme? I've probably just really butchered that. It appears in the form Ewelme in an Anglo-Saxon land charter dating from the 10th century, making the settlement pre-Norman. Running parallel to the high street are a series of watercress beds which were integrated into the chalk stream in the 19th century. The cress here is no longer harvested and sold, but it is still grown for historical preservation of the site. The name Ewelme is derived from the natural spring which feeds the chalk stream here. It is a derivation of water's whelming, which I think is a very atmospheric and slightly eerie description. I did think about having a wee nibble on the cress, but the sign put me off. There is a pretty unnerving story associated with this bridge, which I found on the Ford's Farm website. According to an account from a solitary local man by the name of Paget, one dark evening he was crossing the bridge. He had apparently only had one glass of whiskey. Sure. I'm going to read directly from the website here because this description is really chilling. Suddenly, he was seized by a cold feeling of fear. His flesh crept and his hair literally stood on end when he saw a huge dark shape emerge, still darker out of the surrounding night, and gradually tower over him until it reached an enormous size. Although it seemed a shapeless mass, yet its effect was of some enormous slow-moving hairy animal which gradually glided past him until it vanished into the hedge, and not till then could he find his legs again when he ran as hard as he could back to his own quarters. No one could explain the apparition, though the villagers would shake their heads when the place was mentioned. They would not pass it alone at night, and the cress men too are said to have seen strange things there. I think it's worth noting that before the study of microbiology, sickness and disease were often blamed on poor air quality, toxic vapours, and miasma which swirled out from stagnant waters. Now, by all accounts, the water in this chalk stream was historically very clean. That's why watercress was grown here. This account is probably from the 20th century after these discoveries and seems to be more like a description of some paranormal entity. However, it's difficult not to draw comparison with other folklore from swamps and marshes. There's another similar story from Ford's Farm, this time coming from two young girls, and I quote, "At about 2 o'clock one afternoon, when playing on the Seine Bridge, one of them saw a misty white shape on a nearby apple tree. She called out to her companion, 'Millie, here's a ghost,' and they both ran to see. But as they came up to the tree, they were frightened when they saw the white shape fade slowly away. They screamed with terror and ran home and told their mothers they had seen a ghost." I slowly made my way towards the centre of the village. This is the King's Pond. You may be wondering how it ended up with that name. Supposedly John de la Pole, Alice and William's son, married Elizabeth of York and was brother-in-law to Edward IV and Richard III. His son, unhappily for him, may have been Richard III's heir and died in battle fighting the Yorkist cause. On John's death, Henry VII took the manor at Ewelme and found he liked it so much he spent quite a bit of time there, expanding his lands and building a hunting lodge where Ewelme Park now stands. But he's not the king in question. That's King Henry VIII, his son, who was possibly conceived here. He also visited, bringing his wives with him. It's said that Catherine Howard, wife number 4, once pushed him into the pond. Perhaps that's the reason he beheaded her. I then made my way towards St Mary's Church, which was essentially rebuilt over an earlier church known as All Saints. Restoration work began when the de la Poles inherited the land from Alice's mother in 1436. Now, historically, residents of Ewelme had to pray in the church for the souls of Alice and William, the founders of their home, and for good reason. While Alice remained in the village for the rest of her life, spending her remaining years in Ewelme Manor until she died at the age of 71. Her husband wasn't so lucky. In life, William was a key power behind the throne of Henry VI, but rumours spread that he was in the pay of the French. Banished by Henry for 5 years, he left England on the 1st of May 1450, but was intercepted by another ship called Nicholas of the Tower and beheaded the following morning. It's unsurprising then that William's headless ghost has been spotted among the church cloisters. St. Mary's also holds the tomb of Alice de la Pole. On top of this stone chest is a sculpture of Alice lying peacefully, her hands together as if in prayer, but beneath this peaceful image is something a little more unsettling. Hiding below is a grotesquely detailed sculpture of Alice's corpse, with dry skin stretched over her skeletal frame. The purpose of a cadaver monument like this was to remind observers of their finite time on this earth, and ultimately that death comes to us all. Faced with the sculpture of Alice in death for over 500 years, it's no surprise that she has been sighted throughout the village, from the schoolhouse to the churchyard. It seems that even in death, she doesn't want to let go of the place she founded. Ewelme, like many rural settlements in the UK, is a village out of time. Its history is still such a large part of its present-day existence, in some cases very literally. Perhaps the reports of ghosts here in Ewelme are a combination of human imagination and knowledge about the past. The continuity of the church, school and almshouses still serving their original function create the sense that nothing has really changed here, even as the world outside this bubble continues to evolve. Or perhaps the ghosts of the Duke and Duchess of Suffolk really do still reside here, unaware that centuries have passed by. It makes me think about the possibility of energy somehow being connected to the landscape. Perhaps if it is preserved well enough, the memory of the people who once resided here carries forward through these generations. I'm just not sure. The problem with trying to measure the immeasurable is that you can't, at least not with any scientific method. God, talk about stating the obvious. If you enjoyed this, then you might like this video too, and please check out my channel for more videos about dark history, folklore, and the supernatural. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.